What is the unfolding? It's our time, our apocalypse. Did you know the word apocalypse means an unveiling or unfolding of things not previously known? That's the exciting part of midlife, discovering all the mystery and marvel that we didn't even know about ourselves. This is our revelation, and this is the unfolding. Good afternoon and hello, friends. Welcome to a new season of the Unfolding Enneagram podcast. Yes, I said a new season right here at the end of the year when most people seem to be winding down. But there are some things we need to talk about that have evolved from when I began this podcast over 3 years ago, which is hard for me to believe. And I thought, why not now? Why not? It's time for a change. And you may be saying, oh, that is so typical of an Enneagram type 7, but this is not FOMO. This is different. This is evolving. I've evolved. You've evolved. The whole world has evolved and is changing as we speak. We know that. There seems to be a lot of talk, a lot of conversation about transformation and change. In fact, you can hardly pick up anything to read or listen to that we don't hear that we need to change. We need to change. But the conversations mostly discuss what we need to change from. What do we do when things start changing and we don't know what they're changing to? And we may even be pretty sure what we're changing from because some things are quite obvious that have changed. But sometimes the change to is the big mystery. So, here at the Unfolding Enneagram, my observation about transformation is through the use of the metaphor of metamorphosis, because to me, it is the essence of our journey through all stages of life, right? Including this mysterious time we call midlife. And we're going to talk about that with my guest today. It's not about becoming better at who we are. The caterpillar isn't destined to become a better caterpillar. It's about releasing what is no longer necessary. Metamorphosis is what gives the butterfly the ability to fly, and that is transformation. And of course, the Enneagram is my passion, and how I see it is such a powerful transformation tool. But in this new season, I want to introduce you to some women who are living incredibly passion-filled midlives, doing great work in their own field. And today, my guest is Hélène Stelian. I have had trouble saying her name because you'll see it when I put it up, but it was like, oh, there's some, because my name has an accent. Danae has an accent mark. Well, she has two, and one goes this way and one goes that way. And I was like, that is beautiful. Hélène Stelian, and she is an Enneagram type 6. And before we get into this conversation, I want to just point out one of the things I love about Hélène is she is passionate about lifting other women up as well and sharing their great works. She and I both believe that as women, when we lift each other up, amazing things happen. So Hélène, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Before we get deep into this, I wanted to just say, because we talk about the Enneagram a lot on this, one of the women that she has supported and promoted in her work on her website, which we will talk more about later, is a woman that many of us have heard of, Susan Olasek, who many of you know is the founder of the Enneagram Project. It is a wonderful interview on her website, but y'all, that is just one of many. Can you speak about that?
Yeah. No, you know what? Like you said, I love showcasing women and women who are really mission oriented and have that passion in their lives that they really, live day in, day out. And I have interviewed hundreds of women I have actually 2 blogs, Next Act for Women, and one's called Purpose Stories. And you'll see there are so many inspirational women, and I just love lifting them up. I agree with you. We all lift each other up. And I've also interviewed a lot of women doing very interesting work and also personal projects on my YouTube channel called Empowering Women in Midlife. So I'm all about, like you know, meeting other women, showcasing them, lifting them up, and just introducing them to my community, because there's just so much inspiration in what these women are doing.
And that's why, and I'm going to say this in just a second, how I met you. But when I did, it's this, there are so many avenues that we feel passionate about. And, you know, mine has been the Enneagram and women in midlife in general. But I began to realize women in midlife are just doing amazing things within their own passion. And that's what I love about what you've done. You have to go to her website and her YouTube channel, which I'll tell you about later. But before I get into the conversation about what it is you do, let me just kind of give a snippet of your bio. Hélène Stelian is the midlife mentor with a passion for facilitating personal development in women 40 and over. Through her Thrive community, she helps introspective, curious, action-oriented women 40 and over deepen their journeys of self-discovery and growth and create their next chapter with courage and intention. And y'all, if that's not a mission statement, I don't know what is. But when I also read in her bio that she eats chocolate every day, I knew we were kindred spirits.
Yep. Love chocolate.
Yes. I mean, we spend so much of our life going, oh, I can't have that. I can't have that. It's like, know what? Chocolate. So let's get to the good stuff. I want to talk about you. Can you share as much or as little as you want, but I want to hear your personal story of how you began, what led you to do this work and focus on women in midlife.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Danae. It's such a pleasure to talk to another woman like you who is so passionate about what you do. And I also am a big fan of pivoting, you know, transforming, pivoting, evolving. I feel like we are not fixed in our mindset, in our human being, in our lives, and we as human beings can evolve and should, with wherever life is taking us. So I love that you're also having your own evolution. And I'm just very honored to be here and participate in it.
I'm going to keep using that pivot. That's a good one.
Yeah, pivot's a good one, right?
Especially for an Enneagram type 7.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's you know all about that, but
yeah.
If it works for you. Grab onto it. So, okay. So where do I start? Well, the explanation for my name, Hélène, is that I grew up in Paris, and that's obviously Hélène is well, maybe not obviously to everybody, but the accents are from the French pronunciation of Hélène, which is Hélène. And I was one of 4 kids, daughter of a Greek American father and a Danish mother. Hence, you know, that's French was my first language. And so I lived in Paris until I was 13, and then moved to the U.S. My dad was so we're not French at all. I just happened to have been raised there. And my dad was moving, had an office he was opening in Manhattan, and so we moved to, I don't know if you've heard of Greenwich, Connecticut. It's a very affluent suburb of New York. So it was quite the cultural change for me. And, you know, I had a heavy French accent. I really did not fit in. I was probably fairly immature compared to girls my age at Greenwich High School. Like, I was coming from a private all girls Catholic school in France, coming to a public high school in the US, you know, the girls smoking in the bathrooms, the guys, whatever, dating, like all of that was new to me. It was quite the culture shock. So, you know, kind of felt like a bit of a fish out of water. So it was, I really developed a lot of anxiety. And when it came to leaving for college, I was only 17. And so it was really hard for me at that age to leave home. I think I let a lot of my fears guide me to the point where I actually chose Duke University as my college because my older brother was there. I got into a number of schools, and I think I would have been much better suited to some of the smaller liberal arts schools I got into. But I went to Duke because he was there, and it was the closest thing to staying home with my family is going to a university with my brother. And of course, that didn't help me much because he was involved in his own life. We talked about it recently, and he says he told me he still has a lot of, like, he feels so badly that he wasn't there for me more when I arrived at Duke. And, I couldn't expect him to be. So it's just interesting conversations we're having now about that time. But anyway, that school is like it's not a huge school, but it's kind of like a work hard, party hard school. I made some great friends there. So that's the silver lining. But I really lived with a lot of sort of untreated fear and anxiety during that time in my life, to the point where I developed eating disorders. So when I tell you that I eat chocolate every day, it's because I don't deprive myself. I don't have any rules around food. That's very unhealthy for me. So I have to just kind of everything in moderation. I don't have no food rules. I really try to stay away from the black and white thinking about things because it's very destructive for me. So that's a little bit about that. So, I kind of muddled through college. College were not the best 4 years of my life. I mean, I really, look back on it. And for some people, it really is. I remember my dad telling us, oh, take full advantage. It's going to be the best years of your life. And honestly, if you were to ask me today, like, what age would you go back to if you could? I wouldn't. I mean, I love the age I'm in right now, with all of its challenges. So
yes.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I also, it's an interesting question when people ask, what if you could have, if you could go back to any age? I mean, I don't know. What would you pick an age? I mean,
No. And when somebody asks you that, usually we assume that we would go back with having gone through all of the experiences, with the understanding we have about life now. And that, if I knew then what I know now. Well, you didn't, and you weren't supposed to.
Right.
So the idea of longing to go back really just deprives us of the joy that's right here. And I think that is part of the interesting navigation of this time of life. And yes, I'm older than you. I'm past the official midlife entry.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, from here on until the end, I'm going to just call it second half or midlife. But this is what I love about what you're doing, is celebrating. We're not going back, and you really don't need to even want to.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, so you asked me how I ended up doing what I'm doing. I mean, it actually took me a long time to get to this point, because after college, I embarked on a business career. And it's just so interesting for me looking back on how unconscious that decision was, honestly. I had jobs in sales and marketing, and it just felt like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep going down that path. And looking back on it now, I'm like, I really did not stop and consider, who am I? What are my values? What's important to me? What do I want out of my life? And it was just I did fine, but it was not a great path for me. I mean, I spent a decade in corporate America working for Fortune 500 companies. I got my MBA. I mean, I went whole hog down that path.
Yes, you did.
And the good news is it brought me to Chicago. I met my husband here. Friends of ours introduced to us. But it will not surprise you that when I had the opportunity to quit my job, I was really burned out. I tend to pour all of myself into something. I mean, a lot of like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, like you name it, just throw it all in there. And that causes a lot of burnout. That when I had that opportunity to quit my job and stay home with our twin girls after they were born, I grabbed onto that. I mean, I feel very privileged and fortunate to have had that choice. Most women do not. So I totally get that. And it was a relief to me. And honestly, that is the first time I felt like I am exactly where I need to be, taking care of my daughters. They were premature. They had some health issues. It was like my calling, my purpose, like everything gelled for me around that. And it's the first time in my life that I felt very secure in, I am doing exactly what I need to be doing right now. Because up to now, I had not thought about it. I was just kind of like going along. And kind of responding to what my environment, my family, my world was telling me, and not really looking inward. And this really felt right to me. So that was a very cool first feeling for me. I was really devoted to my daughters. I felt that sense of purpose. And we moved to the suburbs of north of Chicago, and I got very involved in the community. I was volunteering in the schools, serving on nonprofit boards. I wrote a couple of parenting books. I mean, I was all in.
Wow.
But here's the problem: when you make being a mother your identity, is that at some point, usually when their kids are in their teens, they're kind of like, yeah, bye. I mean, we moved back to the city. Our daughters wanted to go to a high school in the city, and it's a private school. They were like, no, do not come and volunteer at the school. Do not make your friends out of I'm always piggybacking on making friends through them, right? Through their parents of their friends. Well, so that was, even though it was only 40 minutes distance from the suburbs to the city, I kind of had to reinvent myself a little bit, being in the city. I friends I'd known before already had their social circles. We'd been gone in the suburbs for 13 years. I mean, it was a long time. And, I was feeling kind of lost, honestly. I needed to find my own community in the city. And I was turning 50 also. So I think all of that kind of coalesced together to encourage me to take a look at myself and think for myself consciously for the first time ever, probably. How do I define myself? Besides my roles as a mother, as a wife, as a community organizer, like, who am I? It was really kind of anxiety provoking for me. I mean, I felt kind of sad, kind of lost, kind of like, what's next for me? And I wasn't alone, as it turns out, because what I discovered is you need to talk about what's going on with you. And the more you talk about it, the more you will come across people, in this case, women, who are also going through this. Like, instead of
talking about it.
Yeah, talking about it.
We're not talking about it. It wasn't common to talk about this.
Right. Yeah. But that was, 8 years ago. So at that time, I started talking about with good friends I could trust. Like, I'm really feeling kind of sad. I don't know what I'm doing. Should I go back to work? Should I, go to school? I need to figure something out for myself. Like, what is my purpose beyond being a mother and a wife and a homemaker and a community organizer, a volunteer, all of that stuff? Like, who am I now at 50? And I actually, I don't know if I can curse on this, so I'm not going to, it caused me to write I wrote a piece. That's what got me into the Huffington Post, called My FU 50s, which I had read that quote from a writer had labeled, and I felt like that is exactly what I'm feeling. I'm like, throw caution to the wind. I just want to explore who I am and what I can be in this world, and just start to feel just like like better in my skin. Like, I don't have to show up as someone else's vision of who I am. I can just be myself and try on even different, explore myself, explore the world. So it was really a freeing time for me. And in that exploration, I also met women who had already gone through this midlife transition and had asked some of the same questions and had embarked on new adventures for themselves. And that was so inspirational to me that's when I decided to start my blog called Next Act for Women, all about women in midlife and beyond who made some pretty major personal or professional changes in their lives. I mean, anything from leaving a marriage and meeting the love of her life, who happens to be female, to getting trained as certified as a yoga instructor and opening your own yoga place. I mean, it just all kinds of stuff. Really, really cool stories that I began to collect and write about and interview these women, because I felt like there needs to be a conduit, a conversation between the women who are trying to figure midlife out and trying to figure their pivot, their transformation, their evolution, and the women who've been there before us, and what was their experience? And I always, what did they learn from that experience, and what can they pass on? What wisdom can they share with us who are coming up behind them? And that was really really a cool project. And I enjoyed doing that. And I continued to do that for years. But about a year in, I kind of felt like I want to do more than just interview these women. I want to have a more active role in helping women through these midlife years, through this self-exploration and this outer exploration. And that's when I decided to become certified as a life coach. And I, really decided to devote myself after a year-long certification to helping women navigate these transitions. And that's the genesis of my journey toward working with women in midlife. And and a lot of coaches work with a population that based on something they've gone through. So it's not a surprise that I'm working with women in midlife, because I had a midlife, I won't call it a crisis because that's a misnomer, but I had a midlife awakening of my own, and so I want to help women who are feeling maybe stuck or lost or confused, encourage them into that awakening also, that there is a path through it to a place where you feel that more confident in who you are, and more, it's in a renewed sense of passion and purpose in your life. So it's just kind of interesting that in my own journey, I found my path of renewal. And
that's how it usually happens, though. Something shakes up our life and we go through something, or we experience something. Maybe it's just, we go to a different class and it's like, I never even knew I could do pottery. That's not me. But I've always thought, oh, I would love to do that and just do it forever. But it comes from, usually the passion comes from something inside of us that got awakened. But I want to just point out something that you said that is really a topic that is a part of my conversations, and my focus is when you said, I wasn't sure of my identity. Who was I apart from my role as, and you can fill in the blank, the mom, and then these different things. And this is part of the awakening process, is letting go of things that we thought were our identity, when in essence and factual, and in fact, they are roles or functions of what we do along life's journey. And I've used this before because I think it's a hilarious, but such a beautiful illustration. Is there's a couple shows on TV. One is an older one called Everybody Loves Raymond, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes. And the other one that I just love is The Goldbergs. In both of those comedies, the mother role is so over the top that it's so obvious she has gone so far past her function in life, the role that she was supposed to assume, and now she's crossed over into the absurd, which is what good comedy is. It takes regular life and makes it absurd. But that's, I think, where we need to have more conversation, is in that very point right there, is what is an identity and what is just a role and function that's not to be an ongoing, to the end of time, part of your life. And so when we get really confused, or a lot of people do, it's like, I'm an empty nester now. Who am I? Well, you are who you have always been. The role that you assumed for a long time with children who needed your hands-on care through the day has changed. And it's like you talked about your twins, the girls, when they went to a school and you'd been, in their lives, a part of their daily routine. And suddenly this is what happens with evolution. And it's the beautiful part, like when a mother bird, kicks the baby out. This is the breaking apart of identity and role and function, and saying, they're taking on adulthood. It's scary for me because my function in their life is changing. And now what is that for me? So I love that you brought that point up. That's a huge point.
Yeah. And I think, I honestly, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I think I was over-identified as a mother. I think that I made it like my new career, so to speak. So, I mean, even though I was doing other stuff, that's, I think, why it was so hard for me to transition out of that, why it was particularly difficult for me. and why my daughters kind of needed to tell me, stop, mom, like just get out of our faces, like just give us some room, breathing room here. So it's just, I credit them for that, for kind of, kicking me out of the nest. So
yeah, it happens. Yeah. That push pull of both of the mother child. My daughter was well, here in the South, we have a thing called clogging, which is, it's like tap did it, but it's on the heel and the toe. And, she also did Irish step dance. And she toured, I say we, see, my mouth formed to say we toured. That was my initial thing. But the whole dancing family, the team that she was on, we traveled together. The girls performed. We sewed their costumes. We traveled. We went to Vegas for Thanksgiving one year. And so this whole community was such an amazing time of my life, because my friends were there and the excitement of travel and all of that. And then just one day, she said, I'm done. I don't want to dance anymore. And I was like, oh no, no,
so much of you were so involved.
Oh, so involved. And so I had to I didn't, challenge her on it. I asked, why? And at the time she said, because I can't focus on being a cheerleader at her school and commit to dance. I really want to be more involved with the school. So she gave that up. But she had done it since, she saw it when she was 5 years old. We were at a talent show at her school, but she was 5. And she just looked up at me and said, Mommy, I want to dance in those shoes that click. And I was like, oh, because see, I grew up and we were not allowed to dance. And that's a whole different subject.
Okay.
It was a religious thing. It's like not allowed. Yeah. And I had come a long way in my thinking. And I was like, I was not allowed to dance. You shall dance for me.
Yes, you'll mini me.
Yes, but I didn't. So anyway, the point of that is, when she told me that, I had to go away to myself and not be reactive to her and go, you can't do this to me.
Right.
And say, okay, this was for her. This is not me. And I won't say that I didn't just, it was very sad at the goodbyes and stuff, but it allowed her to transition and me to transition at the same time.
It was a gift in a way. Yeah.
It was fun while it lasted.
And it's hard. Transitions are really hard. So,
especially when we tend to put our identity with that,
yes. When we're so focused on our roles, like you said.
Exactly. That's right. So, let me get into just a couple questions, if you don't mind me asking you. Since this is the focus is midlife women. What have you seen in your work that are some of the main challenges, especially as women are entering, they're just entering this new life, or they may be in it? What do you think?
Well, I don't want to bring you down, but there are a lot of challenges. If we think of midlife as women entering around 40 or 50, there are, like, I call it the perfect storm. It's so many challenges, kind of an overload of demands coming on us at the same time, a lot of change. So let's talk about these. There's kids leaving home. So that's the empty nest. That oftentimes happens around this time. At the same time, if we are lucky enough to have our parents still living, they're aging, they're going through some challenges, maybe physically, financially, and home, like all kinds of stuff, maybe coming along there. And we are the sandwich generation. So oftentimes we are caregiving on both ends. We may also experience the death of a loved one. I mean, maybe one of those parents. For some women, unfortunately, their spouse may go. And it's an interesting time, because once our parents are gone, especially, it's weird to think of ourselves. And my parents are both still living, so I haven't reached that yet, but I've thought about it, because other women have pointed this out to me, that once your parents go, you are the elders, you are the next in line, the matriarchs of the family. And so it's a big evolution, I think, just in the way you think about it. Like I still think of myself as, I'm still the kid, like my parents are still alive, but once my parents go, like I'll be my siblings and I will be that generation that's now the next to go. And so there's a lot that goes into thinking about that. That's kind of like blows my mind a little bit. There's often marital strain in midlife. I mean, there is such a thing as the great divorce. If you have not been nurturing your marriage all along, as you maybe have had raised kids, when the kids leave, which hopefully they do, that's the way it's supposed to happen. It can cause a lot of stress in your marriage. You may be looking at each other going like, I don't know, what's connecting us now? Is all we're talking about the kids. Like, how are we still a couple? How are we going to work this and spend the next few decades together, just the two of us? There's often work issues too. Like maybe it's getting harder to advance at a certain part. If you're working in a big company, maybe we become a little bored with our work. Maybe we want to go back to work, but we find reentry challenging. Like things have changed a lot. I mean, I know if I was trying to go back to corporate America, I would need a whole new retraining. In the way marketing works today, we didn't have internet, social media, any of that stuff back then.
No.
So it's a whole different world, which I'm kind of learning as I go along, navigating my own business. There's sometimes financial issues, because we're paying, maybe helping our kids pay college tuition. There's concerns about retirement security. Oftentimes we find loss of community also because maybe we move away, we downsize, maybe our friends do, people start to, so it's not like that community that maybe you were in based on, your family situation, your kids. And I mean, we haven't even gotten to physical changes. I mean, we've got aging, issues. Menopause has a lot of physical ailments for a lot of us. The health scares start, and we start to have some cognitive and emotional, memory lapses, little things like that. And the research, I mean, the data shows that we're at a higher risk of, anxiety and depression as we hit this age, which increases our risk of addiction, and a lot of us end up coping. Maybe we drink a little too much, or we just become used to that glass of wine every night. Maybe we're eating a little too much. Maybe we're, taking some sleeping pills. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And that's why, it's really interesting if you look up U curve of happiness, that it dips in midlife. And it's been shown in 72 countries that midlife is the trough of that U curve, where all these challenges come together. Now, the good news is you're going back up. A lot of us, if we do this important work of figuring out who we are, what's important to us, what kind of life we want to create, and we let go of some of the regrets, we make peace with the past, there's only opportunity to go back up and to really find the wonderful happiness as we age and get past those midlife challenges.
I love that you put it that way, because it's so true. And if we're more inclined to open up and be forthcoming and vulnerable and honest with, this is happening and I wasn't ready for this. And then have a community of support that says, this is exactly normal. Because I think when it's so new, then you think, oh, well, something's wrong. But what I love that I've seen from you and others as well, but is that I have seen just this almost a resurgence in the idea that women, you're done. Once you've gone through that, you've done your kids, you've done that, then what you need to be preparing for the final days or the winter of your life or anything like that. And I have great role models. My mom is still living. Her mother just passed 2 years ago at 97. It was just, and I have a daughter and grandchildren. So I said I was like the bubble in a level, because I was in the middle of 5 generations at one time. And that was a weird place because I saw myself as the young one.
Right.
Well, I wasn't by any stretch of the imagination, not the young one, but you know what I'm saying? When you have a mother and a grandmother.
Grandmother, for sure. You got lots of it kind of makes you feel like, oh, there's so much time. They're still around, so I'm going to be around forever.
Exactly. But then things start happening and you're like, what is that? Like, and this is so silly, but you wake up with these new aches or pains, and it's like, I didn't do anything. What happened overnight? But we can laugh about it because we're talking about it now. And it's like, nope, this is what happens. But what you're talking about is encouraging women, empowering women, which is the name of your Facebook page and your YouTube channel, empowering women in midlife. And that is to say, you have a wealth of talent that you may not even know about. And to go away from the old mindset that women in this age, like, if you go back to the 50s or, around then, the 60s, we started getting really liberated. Or I wasn't, and I wasn't a young woman in the 60s, but the mentality of this is who you are, this is your identity, and everybody retires at this age, and then your husband's going to play golf forever, and you're going to stay home and bake bread, and pretty much just do whatever. I never bake bread. But that's what I love about this conversation, is saying, wait a minute, we got a lot left to give and discover about ourselves.
Totally.
So, all right, I have another question. So along those lines, because I've seen you've had so many people, you talked about the lady who opened the yoga studio. What are some other adventures or ventures that you have seen women come to the forefront and take a real role in being almost an activist for this time of life?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen all kinds of stuff, and it's interesting. I just want to point out that we are not, midlife is very different, like you said, for us than it was for our ancestors. I mean, there's some really interesting things going on, and just even if you look at the statistics, in 1960, women on average lived until age 73. In 2015, that life expectancy has gone up by 9 years to 82. And the US Census Bureau predicts that by 2030, that average was going to be 84. So, and by 2060, 87. So, I mean, that lifespan has increased. And that's what I think about as bonus years. These bonus years are an incredible time. They're not extending sort of the time at the end of your life when you're maybe really kind of like your body's really giving way or whatever. They're kind of extending this middle part of our lives where we still are vibrant. We still have a lot to give. And that's this exciting sort of encore adulthood, as they're calling it, which
love that.
I love that. Like it's kind of a second adulthood, an encore adulthood. So it's kind of like after your sort of career, child raising, family time, and it's kind of like this extra span of years before you maybe are going to be sitting in the rocking chair, where you really have a decade, 2 decades or more where you can still be productive. And that's why it's so exciting to see how much women are doing with these bonus years. I mean, and with their newfound wisdom and confidence, as you kind of process all this stuff and you kind of deal with all those challenges in midlife, and you show yourself that the experience and the strength and the wisdom you've cultivated over all these years, you can put to bear against these challenges, and you can get through them and thrive through them. It's a time when I see women putting themselves first, which is a huge piece of advice I give to women, because we are nurturers and caregivers. That is practically baked into our genes, into our genetic code. And we often put ourselves second, to the needs of our spouses, our children, our families, our communities, our bosses. And so I think a lot of women view midlife as sort of an interesting time where we have an opportunity to really come to terms with who we are and what we want, and to become, to let go of the people pleasing, and even let go of some of the pressure we feel about our appearance, and be more accepting of ourselves and of others, and invest in ourselves and our self-care and our personal growth, and find our voice and express it. So I feel like women really have a permission to in midlife to live authentically, like true to themselves, be all that they are. And that's the opportunity, is them embracing this time, embracing this freedom, this confidence, this creativity, and to take more risks. I think we're willing to take more risks because we're not as afraid of failure. We're not as afraid of judgment. And so to your question, it's no surprise that women make sometimes very dramatic changes in midlife. I mean, so what I see is women going back to school. They're getting maybe that college degree they never got that they really wanted to. I mean, my mom did that in her 40s. She went back to school while we were in high school. It's awesome. So the master's degrees a lot of women get, or even certifications like an editing or yoga or a coaching certification, some additional qualification around something that they're passionate about. That's, and you got your Enneagram, the certification. I mean, something that they have discovered that they want to learn more about. And it's such a different way to learn when you're in midlife, when you're passionate about that, than the rote way we learned in school, or when we weren't that into that required course we had to take. When we're choosing to do this, and it's so rewarding, and we're so into it. So it's a different way to go back to school. And then I see women starting new businesses that showcase their talents and their passions, whether it's becoming a photo organizer or maybe a parenting coach, something. Women want flexibility. And so starting their own businesses often gives them more of that flexibility, because they want to be able to, visit their kids or travel, or, just go on more adventures. Another thing I see women doing is finding their voices around causes that are really important to them, becoming advocates for something that really speaks to their hearts. So maybe for, I know women who are very involved in animal rescue, for example, or women's rights. So you will see women either, volunteering or starting organizations to really promote and advocate for the rights of others. And that's kind of taking that caregiving to another level. You'll see women embarking on adventures. I have several women I've interviewed who have become nomadic in their lifestyle. So they will move around either on their own with a partner, or become a pet sitter, or, so they'll move from home to home and sit for your pets, and literally like maybe get a storage locker, put their stuff in it, or like live. Oh, wow. Or another woman I've interviewed who moved to Tuscany. Or, adventures like active travel. I mean, we're still, a lot of us are still have a lot of vibrancy. And then there's women who leave their stale marriages and they're embracing single life or finding new love. I have friends getting remarried and finding love online. And, after maybe a bitter divorce, it's really exciting to see that in your 50s and 60s, you're not done. And then I love that women are putting their voices out there. The other thing I see, I interview a lot of authors, and writing their memoirs, writing that first novel, writing a blog, publishing a podcast like you're doing. You're putting your voice out there in the world and saying, I got something to say. Maybe I've been quiet a little too long. So that's just some of the things, the trends I'm seeing in what women are doing, and really just courage, just with intention. There's just, the sky's the limit. They're really, age is not an object. They are not, they want to live a bigger life. They want to, on their deathbed, think about, like I grabbed the opportunity. I don't have the regret of not trying, whether it fails or not, it's okay. And that's the biggest message I hear from all the women I've interviewed. I always ask, what's your advice? And I'd rather have tried and failed than not have tried at all. So these women are a representation of that, because, it doesn't always work out, but At
No,
least I,
but
at least I gave it my all. And I learned something and I met new people and I developed new skills. So amazing.
well, and see, there's the misconception that whatever it is I try has to have this end goal in mind, that somebody else has told me that is success. If I try this and I go through here, and what if you try it and you just don't like it and try something? Yeah. But what I love, I'm going to talk about your book in just a minute, that you're going to be so kind to share with our audience, but the part of it is the no regrets second life, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. But what I find so encouraging at this time and what you're doing and what other women are doing is it's changing the landscape of what we assumed was the way it had to be. So it's going to take a little while. I think it's really blossoming a lot with women now, but it will be assumed that this is what we do. We find a new passion. We find a second life. We find all of the things that you mentioned. And the idea that this is winding down years, what will just be foreign to generations coming up. So that's what this conversation is about, is saying, let's change the assumption about what we're, and one of the things that I've talked about as far as the Enneagram goes is, and you see in other things other than the Enneagram, but the Enneagram has been around for quite a long time, but it got this really big, it caught on like wildfire and became popular with all over the place. Well, of course, the natural thing to do in this day and age is to make a meme out of everything, right? And so there's a reason the memes came into be, is because the different types have become identified with certain behaviors. So you see them all over the place. And then after a while, I know for me, it was like, I don't connect with that anymore. Yes, I'm a type 7. I always have been. That's, you're born that way. There's, people have different thoughts about that, nature, nurture, combo, whatever. But so yeah, when I was a 20-year-old 7 or teenager or 30s or whatever, absolutely. I was like, oh man, I feel so exposed when I saw the memes, because it was, yes, I identified with it wholeheartedly. And it can become an excuse to continue behavior that's not actually beneficial to you, actually keeps you stuck in an identity. And so this is part of why it's called the unfolding Enneagram, is to unfold, release your identification with all of these things that we've come to identify as our core type. And so as I aged, I began to realize I don't connect to that. I don't feel that way anymore. And one of the big things about a type 7 is the meme about fear of missing out, FOMO. 7s, they're going to change. They're going to just change. They're going to, jump from one thing to the next because they're afraid of missing out. Well, I don't feel that way anymore. And actually, my theory about that is just there's so much to do. Right. It's that I want to do it all. And that's a whole different thing. But right now, I feel like I found a groove. I don't even have the anxiety of, I have to do all the things that I think about. That's one of the characteristics of a type 7, is we have endless ideas, right? And so everything to a young type 7 is, it will become a business, or it will become the next thing that I take on fully in my life. And why I think we begin to disidentify with these memes is because we've evolved past them. So that's the conversation of what the unfolding is and what the metamorphosis process is, which is a really, like you said, it can be that time of life where we're not quite sure, and it can feel painful because we're letting go. We're not sitting here going, I'm going to be a better mother, as Raymond, right. Mother, and she's going to be in everybody's business. No, it's learning to detach from the roles and functions that served us well. Yeah. Certain point in our life. And they did serve us well. the passionate type 7 who wants to do all the things doesn't feel like, oh, I can't accomplish anything. And to her discredit sometimes is she doesn't realize she can't do all the things. And you learn the hard way. But as we evolve and have these conversations about, wait a minute, I feel this longing to be connected more to myself and not the calls of all the different things that say you need to be this, you need to look like this, you need to weigh this much, you need to not do that, and don't do that. And find that passion within in ourselves that says, I'm good. I'm ready to let go of that. Okay. We have really gone and talked a long time. And I promised you I wouldn't keep you this long.
I knew you and I were going to just have so much to talk about.
I'm sorry. I just feel like we could keep talking. And because I told her, I said, no.
So it's such a good conversation.
Well, quickly, or as much as you want, talk about your community called Thrive.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm super proud of Thrive. So it's a membership and it's entirely focused on personal growth for women in midlife and beyond. And the goal is really to help you rediscover yourself, tackle your blocks, get into action, and really own your own, awesomeness. And create a second half of joy and fulfillment. And then in the company of other women who are on this journey too, because we're all about community. And there's a free level of Thrive where you get to attend a live workshop with an expert I bring in to speak monthly. And the topics vary, but they're all tailored to women 40 and over, from mindfulness to brain health to decluttering to setting boundaries. And then there's a small fee for the paid membership. And you get access to all of my in-depth classes. Right now, I've got 8 of them, and I'm working on 3 more. So it's classes like discover your purpose, boost your happiness, own your superpowers, redeem your regrets, choose your one big goal, and more. And this is really my superpower. I love researching big topics and sort of distilling the data into the critical information you need, and kind of give you a step-by-step method to get into action. And then we also have group coaching monthly with me, where you can show up to get support as you work on any of the classes and be in community with other Thrive members. And also, when you're a paid member of Thrive, you get access to the recordings from all the past workshops we've been running every month. So we have about a dozen of so, I think, on there right now. And it's reasonably priced really because I want to make this accessible to as many women as possible. And as one of my members say, it's a lot of bang for your buck. So, and to learn more, just go to myturntothrive.com. That's my shorthand URL for it. But but thank you for asking. It's really my passion project and where I put all of my work into.
I am so glad I connected with you. You're going to have to go to the show notes this time. People say, oh, well, do they go to the show notes? Yes, because all of her, the way you can contact her is going to be in there. I want you to go to her YouTube channel and Facebook. But if you'll just remember, empowering women in midlife, if you just go to Facebook, then you can find links to her website and the community, the Thrive community, and her YouTube channel, all on there. Hélène, I am so happy we connected.
I just want to mention my gift really quickly. I'm offering your listeners a free ebook, which is called Thrive in Midlife, and it features 10 tips to create a no regrets second half. It's chock full of information, advice, resources, and I've given Danae the link, so I know you're going to provide it to them. But so please download it, because it's really a very comprehensive guide for you that really reflects a lot of what I've learned and what women have shared with me over the years about this time of life. So just
I feel like I should be giving you a gift for coming on my podcast, but you are giving our listeners a gift. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for your work. And as we wrap this up, again, keep thriving in all the days of your life. And if you are a woman in midlife and beyond, remember, these can be the most beautiful days of your life. You've been created for such a time as this, and it's your time to unfold and fly. Hélène, thank you. I look forward to talking to you again. Everybody, go thrive. Bye.
Bye.
I'll edit that.